Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Leaders Toolbox podcast. I'm Andre Young. I hope that you've had an amazing morning or day so far, and I look forward to making it even a bit better with today's special guest that I have with us here today. Liz Hansen is one of the most awesome people that you are going to get to meet on this planet, and I'm honored to introduce her here today. Liz, thank you so much for being here on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. That was very kind of you.
Well, I always like to give a preface of how I met people that I have on the show. And I was speaking on the HR conference cruise. Those of you listening, you heard me right. You do not have to rewind it. It is the HR conference cruise. So the awesome Mike Madero, he runs it. He's the founder of it, and he has a cruise every year where you could get HR credits while you cruise on Royal Caribbean and learn leadership tips and everything. A real thing. So if that intrigues you, click the link to connect with Mike and to either be a speaker or a vendor or attend and enjoy. And that's where I got to meet Liz. And I say these things, and this is true about some people, not all, but I call them the inspired and motivated. And you can tell by their eyes. Their eyes are wider. They blink less than most people. You can see information filling their soul and their spirit. And they have this passion about them, about what they do and what they get to do. And Liz, you had that. So that's how I have gotten to know Liz. And then we did some talk about business and leadership and things like that. So, Liz, I want to welcome you because you are the Enterprise HCM executive. And I'm going to let you not only explain what that is, but first, what the heck did you think about the cruise?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you there, obviously, and so many other people. It was a really enriching experience on so many levels, personally and professionally. But I loved the cruise. It was very different than what I anticipated that it would be. It was my first cruise, so all around
It's
it
your
was
first.
just yeah, I mean, it was just a great experience. I thought there would be more social time, and there was so much social time, but there was so much more professional time. And I left with a lot of knowledge and, people like you, Andre, people that I, now gravitate to and people within my industry. And so all the way around, I think it was just an incredible opportunity. So I would encourage if anyone has an opportunity to join the HR conference cruise. There are a few different dates in the year that you can participate. It really is phenomenal. And it's basically not different than any of the other conferences that are had either at the state level or at the national level
Okay.
for SHRM or any of the HR organizations. It's the exact same thing. We just do it on a cruise ship. So that's pretty
Do it
amazing.
on a cruise ship, eat steaks, go to private restaurants, do karaoke, visit the islands. I said, what a perfect mix.
Yeah.
Um, but I just said a mouthful with Enterprise HCM Executive. Can you explain to those listening before we jump into some great questions that I have for you, what that is and what you gift the world with?
Oh, that's a great question. So, my role function is sales. However, what I sell is I work for a payroll and HR company, and we basically provide technologies from all area of the hire to retire, as we call it, suite. So anything from applicant tracking, employee engagement, onboarding, payroll, HR, performance, goal management, compensation. I mean, it just goes on and on. So basically, if you think about any employee getting hired into their organization to the time that they retire from that organization, any technology that would impact their process as an employee is what we're providing. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so awesome because I live by upgrade. Like there's three big things we need to upgrade. We need to upgrade. If you're a leader in an organization, you're always upgrading your people, your processes, and your technology.
Yeah.
Anything that stands still is going to die. So I love that you do that and you offer that. But I want to ask you a question about leaders because we have a lot of leaders that are listening to this show or people who desire to be in leadership positions. So I'm assuming that you did not come out of the womb as an HCM executive, so you didn't come out with that title. So I want to ask you to give some nuggets for people listening. what are some characteristics that you displayed on your climb up the ladder? Or what advice would you give other people like regarding characteristics that they can display to be noticed to move up the ladder for promotions and opportunity?
Mm. Well, to go back to the beginning part of your comment, maybe I was born into it. My mom was an HR director. You know, she was a retired CHRO.
So
So
I take that
I
back.
did,
You were born.
right. I think I did somewhat come by it, honestly, and was born into it. No, but I think the things that I've learned a lot along the way are really just, um, you know, I would say learning from every opportunity, just
Mm,
always having eyes
mm,
wide open. I think everything we do personally and professionally align in some way. And I do have a love of people. I know you probably saw that when we were on the cruise. I really love I've never met a stranger. So I just think there's a learning opportunity in everything we do. And we see
mm,
that so much regardless of what position you are within an organization, you have these big wins, these sometimes big losses as well.
right.
And we have these heightened emotional states about that immediate instance. But when we take a step back, we really see that there was a big learning opportunity there as well. And then we use that to kind of cultivate ourselves into the better for the next situation. So I would say that is probably the biggest thing.
Wow. I love what you said. My eyes lit up when you said eyes wide open.
Yeah.
So I've written 5 books. My second book, no one knows about, Liz. You guys listening, 7 Ways to Love, I never talk about. And in there, I talk about, it's a chapter called Eyes Wide Open. Because when I went through the toughest time of my life, I went through a divorce about 17, 18 years ago, depending on when you're listening to this. And I said, people said that had to be so hard. And it was. And it made it easier because I chose to keep my eyes wide open going through the hardest times. I wanted to stare it right in the face because it never was going to hurt more than the first time I saw it and experienced it and felt it. So eyes wide open and extract the lesson, and not just the feeling. So you mentioned 3 nuggets. So you guys listening, Liz is giving nuggets here. Okay. Every show is titled Leaders Nuggets. And so keep your eyes wide open. Extract the lessons from the wins and losses and be a lover of people. Did
Mhm.
I get that right?
Yeah. Yeah, because I think it's always really important to operate with intention. And I really believe, just bring your whole self. Because at the end of the day, we're just human beings doing work.
Mm,
And, we saw this, I think, probably most prevalently with COVID when the pandemic shut everything down. And all of a sudden, people were working from home or not working at all. And if your identity is only work, then what are you really bringing forward? So I think it's very important to understand, when you go into the boardroom, when you go into a meeting or you meet people, we're just human beings trying to do our very best at the role that we are, sitting in.
I love
So
it.
yeah.
But I call it the COVID effect. And in no way do I want to minimize the pain that anyone has experienced through the pandemic. I look at it as let's keep the COVID effect going because when COVID hit and everybody was remote, our titles didn't matter anymore. Everybody became a person, and everybody's job was how do we get through this and get results and make it happen and take care of each other. It
Mhm.
didn't matter where you were at a boardroom. It didn't matter if you were the CEO. It didn't matter if you just started yesterday. It was all how do we get this done? And we got human to human.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I can see your background. If you guys are listening to this, you don't see this. Like I can see Liz's background in the room that you're in. So we got to see somebody's significant other walk by. Maybe the puppy barked. We just got introduced into their real life. And it wasn't so much about title, it was about loving people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
Well,
each person has a reason for what they do as well, really understanding their why, both personally and professionally. What is change going to, how is change going to impact that individual,
well, and leaders, and I talk about this, leaders seem to only ask why you are here and why you want the job. in that first initial interview, and then we never ask again.
Yeah.
Because whys can change, and that's okay. Can I meet your why, your new why, and marry what I want and need from you with your why as it changes over time?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you say that because the company that I'm currently working for, my interview process was actually wonderful. And I went through many interviews because I was interviewing at a time of year where, generally an organization, they train at a certain time of year and they onboard at a certain time of year. So I went through all of these interviews, and every interview was just a feel good interview. The person that I was speaking with was, they, of course, they would ask me about my background and about, my experience level, or, what I could contribute. But it was mostly about, who are you as a person?
Right.
What they were trying to figure out if I was going to be a good culture fit. So I found that to be really interesting because I hadn't had that before. Most of the time it's, where will you be in 5 years? These kind of, can't, if you could be any animal, what would you be? And so I'm like trying to like think of all the angles prior to interviews, but it really was a very pleasant experience. And I think that's something a lot of organizations, especially now, we're talking about the pandemic, there's been a lot of movement across organizations by employees, boomeranging, leaving, coming back. Engagement has been at its highest level since the pandemic, right? Understanding how we're going to contribute to both retention and retainment,
Right.
and just kind of keeping everybody solid, feeling strong. And engagement is one of those things. And I think organizations are really focused in now on mastering that piece of it and having good culture fits. And when I say culture, I mean more, a personality, regardless of who you are, just,
Yes.
are you going to be a team player? Are you going to contribute to the conversation? Are you going to, do the right things? That type of stuff. So I
It's
think
the difference between like motivating. Like I said, really trigger word for me. Like people say, well, we want to motivate our employees. I said, listen, I played football for a very long time. Not a very long time, longer than a lot of people, I guess. And it's that speech, that rah-rah speech that the coach gives. You know how rare that is, that the rah-rah speech rah-rahs you up and you tear out and win the game with the things that movies are made of. I
yeah.
said, could you imagine having to motivate your people at every turn, at every project? You want to bring in already motivated people, and
Mhm.
then you want to lead them towards the vision of success.
Yeah.
So if you have to motivate people all the time, that's not the culture fit you're looking for. So let's
Yeah.
get more specific about who we're bringing in, and now do we have the tools to educate, to train, to direct, and to lead?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Couldn't agree more.
Now, I do want to go back before I ask you this next question because I said you weren't born into it. You said you were, and through the pandemic, and this is 2024. You guys listening, we're talking pandemic, still 2024. Our kids heard so much while mom and dad were home at work. So if when you have the opportunity to talk to your child about what you do for a living, the decisions you make, how you make them, do it.
Mhm.
My 4-year-old, she's now 5. She said, Dad, I want to play with you. I said, okay, let's go. What do you want to do? She said, I want to do ice cream shop. So she has an ice cream shop and she's the owner and I'm the customer. This day she said, switch, you be the owner and I'm going to be a customer and I'm going to pretend that I need a job. I said, okay. So she got her scooter. She rolled up to the shop and she looked at me, Liz, and she said, I'm poor and I need a job. I said, oh, I said, what can you do? She said, well, I can email, I can Zoom call, and I can sell. I said, wow.
You're hired.
And I said, well, how do you do this? And then I went through my whole Leader 7, and she says, well, how do I get more for doing a great job instead of a good job? Oh, so your incentives. And I explained to her the 7 professional languages, and she says, I'm respect. I don't touch me and please use your manners. I don't like to be touched, and can you please use your manners? So I say all that to say, some people, our kids, we can help our kids to be born into being great when they see and catch us being great. When we can have work conversations instead of returning home and complaining about the day or acting like it didn't exist. Say something good about your day, the decision you made, why you made it, how you helped someone. kids are listening anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, kids are sponges. So likely she's picking on up on that because of your teachings and the things that she was hearing you say when you were home. She's mimicking you. Which is so it's so true. It's phenomenal.
And
Phenomenal.
those of you who have ever been on the call with me, you might see her pop up and she's standing right next to me on calls. So that's awesome. I want to ask you question number two. You ready?
Mhm.
What's the biggest thing that you needed to overcome or overcame that evolved you into the leader that you are today?
Mm. I would say the biggest thing for me is probably confidence. Because I am someone who's always open to learning. I want to learn more and more and more. But when you have that kind of mentality, you sometimes, or at least for me, I would always feel like I don't know enough. So
Mm,
if I'm going to stand in
mm,
front of someone and educate or be a mentor, or, am I even qualified to do that? Because I don't know enough. I need to know more. Um, but I think, it's kind of like aging. On the inside, you always feel like you're 20 years old, you feel like you can, still do all the things, stay up late and um but um then someone maybe brings to you, they'll make a comment about, no, I don't need your ID, or don't worry, technology was hard for me as well, or something like that, and you really kind of come back and realize, oh wow, I am, I'm further than I feel that I am, and so I think that was big for me, is just the confidence.
well, it's interesting. It's amazing how much we don't know, how much we know sometimes.
Can we pause for 1 second? I'm so sorry. My
It's amazing how much we don't know what we know until you go to explain it to somebody. And in one of my books I've written, leaders know if you really write down, here's the topic, here's the bullet points, and you've been doing it for a while, you tell people they're amazed. And you're like, oh, it's common sense. No, it's just you've been doing it so long that it's second nature. So it's amazing how much we really do know. And for confidence, for me, it's always one, you're always learning and growing, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes it's best to ask a person, what do you need most from me right now? So I don't have to know everything. I just need to know what you need from me most. And all of a sudden, I'm the best thing in the world to you or the issue.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, because it's always room to learn, but I can learn something and not be able to help you. I can learn something and not apply it. So, from a confidence standpoint, my biggest thing to overcome was two things. One was assumptions.
Mm.
I never forget, and this changed my life as a leader. I ran a mental health team in a mental health facility, and I was in charge of group therapy. So I loved doing group therapy, and all of a sudden it was just so much that now you're pairing therapists to do it together.
Yeah.
So one therapist was a new guy, younger guy. All of the students and patients loved him, and just a gregarious, big personality. Another woman, she was the one of the best clinicians I've ever been around. So pairing these two up, said, you guys got that group. Now, 3 months into the year, I didn't attend the group. Why should I have to? These are two all-stars put together. So one day I had some free time, don't know how that happened, and I had my coffee and I went in and sat in this group, Liz. It was an abomination. I could not believe how bad it was. The gregarious guy kept talking about stories about himself in high school. There was no therapy going on. Every time the woman therapist wanted to do something clinical, the students ran her over. She was super frustrated. The kids weren't getting better, and the guy was getting idolized. I said, oh my goodness, I assumed wrong.
Yeah.
Never made that mistake again. So I needed to get over my assumptions of people, whether you think they're good, bad, great, or they picked up what you said. Just because you said it doesn't mean they got it.
Yeah.
So I had to get over assumptions. And then the other thing that I still work on to this day is speed. I am a visionary and I'll have these big ideas and I want to go. And sometimes just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Mm.
So I'll have an idea now, and my team has helped me, and I've given them permission to slow me down so we can do it right. If you can do it fast and right, fantastic. But if you're going to do it fast and wrong or not so good, then what's the point?
Yeah.
So that's those two big things were things that one I overcame, the other I'm always working to overcome.
Yeah. And it's so true. And you said something actually in your session on the cruise that impacted me as well. And you said it's really important to understand and acknowledge the position that you're in, and if it's really the best position for you, essentially. Right.
Mm.
So you might be in a sales role, for example, and you might be thriving, but is that really where you're supposed to
Right,
be? Are you
right.
contributing the way that you want to, or are you a good employee? Are you a good leader? And that was really impactful for me as well, because I think for a lot of people, we get into our role and we just see the goal. This is my responsibility. I need to make this number, hit this strategy, hit this goal, whatever it is. And you get your head down, and you just kind of drive forward to trying to find that success, right? Like meeting that endpoint. But is it really where you're supposed to be? Are you as efficient as you need to be? Just recognizing that. And like you, I have felt in situations, someone is an expert that maybe, I got a glimpse into exactly what you just said. You get a glimpse into how they're operating and you're like, oh, well, maybe,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it does shed a lot of light. You're right about that.
Well, and sometimes you don't even know the possibilities. So I'll speak from an entrepreneur and then from an employee. So as an entrepreneur, at first you throw everything at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah.
So you're an entrepreneur listening, you're starting a business. You're like, ooh, whatever sticks and pays me first is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But that might not be what you like or love to do. So now you're just doing it for the money and now you're a slave to it. You might as well go get a job somewhere.
Yeah.
The other thing as an employee is you do something, you get good at something, and now you put your head down, like you said, and work, or the company only sees you doing that. And there are so many roles and positions within companies these days. But you put your head down, you don't know all of the possibilities even anymore. So hopefully leaders within an organization says, hey, have you ever thought of this? Or hey, I think you'd be good here. And the person may be confident, not confident, wanted or not wanted, but are we making an introduction? And as the employee, are we helping our leaders to lead us, help our coaches to coach us and say, hey, I'm curious of what else I can do here. This is my skill set, but I don't know what you guys offer. So those are some big things that I would like to see more happen in organizations. But I want to ask you, what would you like to see leadership in organizations do more of or less of to best care and impact their people?
I think something that's always really important is to, you know, listen to the people who are really in touch with your prospects or your client base, to understand how things are going at that level. Because when you grow to a certain level within an organization, you are losing touch with every gain, from your actual client base, and the people that are supporting those clients and the people that are, have kind of boots on the ground, as they say, those are the people with the most amount of information and feedback. And I think the challenge as a leader is that you can't always take every ounce of feedback into consideration, right? Like there are going to be limitations, but I think if you have to just stay in touch with those team members that are the face of your organization, essentially, to understand, how that feedback is going to impact the metrics and the goals that you have as an organization. Because if you're just looking at the numbers,
Yes.
you just
Yes.
you lose so much sight.
Well, because numbers, I used to think, because this is the old saying, don't judge me for it. They say men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And
Mm,
I'm like, Yeah, they do. The older you get, the
Yeah.
more business you do. Numbers can do whatever you want them to do.
Yep. Yep.
So I love that if when leaders and organizations can listen more to their frontline people, because like you said, growth is an issue, and every company hopefully goes through it. And
Yeah.
you get further and further away from the transaction, further and further away from the results.
Mm.
Those frontline people will tell you the truth when they feel safe.
Yes. Yes. That's true.
You make them feel safe. And I tell my, yeah, I share with my people. I just had a conversation with my assistant this week. And one of my big questions every now and then for anybody that works with me or for me, what do you love most about what we're doing right now? What do you love most about your role right now? What's frustrating you the most right now? And if
Yeah.
it's with me or the process, please be honest, you know,
Yeah.
because you need that feedback and they're going to tell you truth when they feel safe. Now, how do you, as leaders, we don't do a great job of telling people how to come to us.
Yeah.
So a survey is easy, write it down, it can be anonymous, but when somebody needs to have a conversation, we forget who we are. You feel like you're Liz or I'm Andre. But when you stand next to somebody that works for you and a few levels down on the ladder, they straighten up. They don't want to talk. They don't know what's going to happen. You don't know the professional abuse they may have suffered somewhere else.
Yeah.
So for me, it's always the leader's blueprint. You have something to say. This is the best method to reach me. Whether it's email, Slack, knock at the door, work phone, contact, you got to know as a leader how you want to be approached.
Yeah.
And what's the first sentence that they can say that has your attention? And then, hey, please bring this information, this other information. What other departments would need to be affected? How much money are we talking? Now, I've given you the blueprint. Now you can effectively come to me without fear, and I have to manage my emotions of the minute to make sure that I'm not a liar, and I'm going to be, make sure that you're safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, too many layers of leaders within an organization is a challenge as well. It creates a bottleneck because, again, the leaders are humans also. They, might feel threatened that someone is going to the leader above them or,
Mm.
in a cross segment to ask for information. That they kind of want to be these gatekeepers of their teams and controlling of the information. And and on a human level, I do understand that, but I think that's also a fear-based technique. But when you open the lines of communication all across, as high as you can, right? The CEO obviously is not going to be able to take a phone call on his or her cell phone from every employee, but if you can at least open those lines of communication and allow people to go where they need to go, then I think that's a really good culture.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and there's been times, and maybe you've been through it and want to give a tip about it. It's way off script because there was times where I was an employee and I had a manager, and then managers had managers and bosses and supervisors, and me and my immediate manager were having a tough time. It
yeah.
was a very disrespectful, not me to him, but him to me. And the conversation that I chose to have was, listen, I feel the tension and I'd really rather not go above your head to discuss it. So I
Yeah.
was hoping we could have a conversation to work this out here. So what I said was, I will go above your head, but I don't want to out of respect. I want to respect the chain of command. Can we do something? And we were able to have a great conversation and everything was okay. But respecting the chain of command. Have you ever been in a situation like that where a chain of command was an issue?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. A former company that I worked for was very much chain of command. And I just don't think it fosters a great culture because ultimately, like in your situation, you had a leader that was open to, working through whatever the challenge was amicably and trying to find, positive resolution. However, not every leader is like that. And from an employee perspective, again, it's fear. And that fear is driven from, I need this career. I have a family. I've, had so much tenure to even get to this point. It's so a lot personally feels in jeopardy over
Yes,
the,
absolutely.
micro situations. And so, I don't know, you just need to, and that's obviously a negative situation, but positively, I think leaders should always encourage groupthink, working in teams, working in groups, being open for advice and, mentorship and things like that, because everyone is going to see something different. They're going to hear something different. They're going to pick up something different. And so if you're trying to progress your team, you want to make sure that you have the most visibility possible. Everyone has an ability to see the big picture, or at least have things to consider, because especially in sales, the worst thing is to be blindsided by
Yeah.
something. So
Yes.
as much
Yes.
information, intel that you can capture, the better. And I think for as leaders, other leaders are going to be, they're going to have different practices. They're going to be doing cool things that maybe your team isn't doing or that you didn't think of. So so when you open up those lines and you give people the freedom to, kind of move about, and gather information, if you will, then I think it's a benefit, right? I think it's a massive benefit.
That is so awesome. You said something, and guys listening, Liz just said something about leaders being human. And that really resonated with me because so many, and this is a tip and a nugget for those in frontline positions or middle management. There's a myth that employees wake up and think their bosses wake up wanting to ruin their day. I am like, that is so far from the truth. Leaders wake up just like you. They have lives just like you. They have kids. They have life. They have bills. They have stress. My son plays football, Liz.
Mhm.
And I tell every player, regardless of sport, they're like, oh, coaches play their favorites. Yes. So what? Find out how to be one of their favorites. What do they enjoy? So you can be you, but meet their need as well. So, from leaders being human, guys listening, catch your bosses doing good. Be able to ask how their day's going. What do they have planned for the weekend? Be able to catch them and say, hey, that was a tough decision. I really appreciate how you delivered that. Can you share with me your mode of thinking that got you to that? Because I wouldn't have thought that. Like leaders, they're so blown away. It's almost like the teacher in school where the kid comes in and says, "Hey, good morning. How was your night?" The teacher's blown away.
Yeah.
So leaders are human. That really resonated when you said that. You also mentioned sales. So I want to ask you,
Mhm.
as a salesperson, because everybody listening is a salesperson. You're selling yourself, you're selling your business, product, an idea, and whether that's to family, friends, or to the world. What are the top 1 to 2, maybe 3 tips that you would give that have helped you excel at sales?
Well, I think, and I think I touched on it earlier, really be intentional, just be very intentional in the information, in the, engagement, in the relationship. If you say you're going to do something, do that,
Mm,
and always set, don't overpromise and underdeliver, I think that's a really, really big one. Because I think the misconception about salespeople is that we're all yes men. We're going to say, yes, of course we can do that, or of course we can provide that, or this is exactly who we are, But I think what a lot of, I'll call them shoppers, right? Anybody who's out looking for a new vendor for anything, um, I think what they don't realize oftentimes, and this isn't true in every situation, but if you think through, what a yes person, the impacts of a yes person in their team, it's very severe. And I
mm,
say that because
mm.
if you were to ask me, can you do this? And I say, of course we can, and then it cannot, and
Right.
you decide to be my partner, um, when you get into that partnership, as soon as you find out that that yes was actually a no, you're going to be frustrated and you're going to share that frustration with the supporting team from the organization.
And it
And
doesn't matter how many right things do happen, you're always still stuck on that.
right, right. And your frustration, and a legitimate frustration that it would be then shared with the team from my organization that's supporting you. And then that team member is going to be needing their management support. And so you see, it's just kind of a drain on all the resources. And so just be very intentional. If I can do something, I'm going to say I can do it. And if I cannot do something, I'll share, you know, a way that it can be done that might be different than the way you're doing it, or I will just say no. And I would
Mm.
rather say
Hmm.
no, I'm not your
Yes.
best fit, than I would to say, oh yeah, 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 that's great. Because it's never good. We're in a
I
situation where
love
we're not
that.
being intentional.
Make your yeses powerful and your no's meaningful.
Yeah.
No's are okay in sales. It's okay to say, no, we're not a fit. No, we can't do that. Hey, you might want to go this route, with another agency or another, for me, leadership person, because I don't do that. People respect when you know what you do and what you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes people don't know what they don't know, so sometimes they're looking for you to say, well, I work with many organizations of your same type, and they do it this way. Is that something that you would be open to doing or learning about?
Right.
And sometimes their answer is no, and that's okay. But a lot of times they say, oh, well, is there a better way? They're eager to learn as well. They want to adapt, they want to be better. So, just be flexible and intentional. And I think everybody ends up getting there at the end of the day. So,
Listen, you guys, you heard it here. These are great sales tips from a great sales exec. Be intentional. I was taking notes while you were talking too. Be intentional with your info and your relationships. Do what you said you were going to do. There's value in no, and under promise and over deliver. Can't go wrong with that.
yeah,
Wow.
really true.
Uh, this time for rapid fire. You
Okay.
ready?
Okay. I'm ready. I'm ready.
So you guys listening, if you've been listening for a while, rapid fire, just ask some spontaneous questions. If this is your first time, I hope you will enjoy it. So, question number one: what do you do most or best to maintain work-life harmony? Because, like you said, life isn't all about work. Now, I know you mentioned pre-show before we hit record that you dance in the morning. So,
Sally beat me to it. Yeah, the things that I do that really bring me work-life harmony are anytime I can just be outside in nature. I love that a lot. It's my time where I can work in my flower beds, or touch up my landscaping, or take a walk, or I try to be as silent as I can. So I try to let go of my music and my
Mm,
podcast, and just
mm,
it's where I do my best thinking, or process conversations that I had, or, learning happens in those moments too. Because I think back on maybe something I said, or if I gave a presentation, the way I said something, those are the moments where I have a lot of aha, I should have, or I should try, or I'm gonna do, so that's generally my time. But I also find a lot of work-life harmony in volunteering,
mm.
because earlier I mentioned, when you go through these situations where you have these high highs and low lows, sometimes at least for me, I feel, wow, I really failed. I failed in that situation. I didn't do the right thing. I knew I should have, prepared more. I should have, shoulda, coulda, woulda kind of situations. But then, if I'm doing something for someone else, it really kind of brings me back, because then I know it's kind of like the easy win, right? The little things you can do for someone else that you can impact them 100%. You're creating an impact, or just putting your shopping cart away, or doing a good act of service for someone. Those are the guaranteed, the moments that are kind of like the equalizer, and just kind of bring everything back. So I would say those are my two biggest things.
I love that. Like, so for me, being outdoors, silence, and volunteering. The silence thing that you mentioned really stood out, because in our world where our phones are so easily accessible and the constant scrolling, and we can't even blame it on young people or teenagers because adults do it too, from every age. There's so little time for silence.
Yeah.
So little time for silence. Especially even when you're working remote, you don't have that de-escalation drive to work or home anymore. So your roles are so much more squished. So being able to just give yourself 10 minutes of just silence or whatever minutes of silence to just hear your own thoughts, to digest your thoughts. And it's amazing some of the epiphanies you'll allow. I think we live in such an epiphany-less society because we're always being entertained.
Yeah.
We're so busy being entertained, we're not digesting our life.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you said that. And if you guys listening to this, please give yourself some moments of silence to reflect and evolve. My next question is, where's your best vacation or travel destination? We already talked about your first cruise, but favorite place to travel or destination?
Oh, I mean, there are so many places still on my list. I don't know how
You gotta
I
pick
could,
one. Let's go.
just one. My favorite, well, I would say probably France, or anywhere in Europe. I met my husband in France, married for 22 years, and it's just there's a lot of history and culture there. I mean, anywhere I can go where I can meet someone that's different than me and who can, enrich me in a way that's gonna, just bring a different perspective. I really love that. It's always my favorite place when I go somewhere and I meet someone who's, vastly different and is, and then I learn things about them. And then, I realize, well, we have a lot of similarities, we're very different. We have a lot of similarities, but you do this and that's cool or, whatever. So I would say abroad for sure. France, because I met my husband there and they have amazing food too.
Does he speak French?
A little. A little
That's
bit.
awesome.
He does, obviously. That's his native language, but yeah.
That is awesome. You just made a lot of people jealous here, I'm sure. Last question. The one thing that you are focused on now, either professionally, personally, or both, that's going to take you to the next phase level of your life.
Ooh, so currently I'm seeking a SHRM SCP certification, which is, a high honor in the HR community. And I've had a lot of excitement in seeking that certification. I've met so many great people along the way, everyone that's willing to provide information or tips or tricks or, so I am seeking that certification, but the journey has been very amazing as well. And once I get that, and I know that I will, I'm gonna go for more than that. So yeah, so I'd say in the near future, SHRM SCP is my goal. That's what's on my horizon.
Boom. That is awesome. Congratulations to you. Those of you guys listening, I hope that you enjoyed these 45 minutes or so with Liz. There are so many nuggets. And one big thing that I say is that through this, you now know something new. Knowing something new without applying something new will never lead to anything new. So please be mindful. What homework are you giving yourself? What was your biggest takeaway? And how are you going to apply it starting today, starting right now? That's going to enhance you and elevate you as a leader and that of those that you are leading. So Liz, thank you so much for being on the show today. And how can people get in touch with you? We'll make sure that we have links. How can people get in touch with you or follow you at all?
So you can follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn, Elizabeth Hansen with an EN. And yeah, I'd love to meet anyone that wants to connect, whether it be networking or anything else. So thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's an honor to be sitting with you. So thank you.
You're welcome and thank you. Guys, have a fantastic rest of your day. Don't forget the takeaway and the homework because listening without doing would make no sense. Guys, have a great one and I'll talk to you and see you next time. Take care.